Okay, well, welcome. Another fun week of crochet. Excuse me. Today, I'm going to go over some of the basics of mosaic crochet. Um, it's pretty cool. I had not had a lot of experience with it. And now I have a list of patterns that, of course, I want to make. Anytime I do one of these, I always find something new I want to make. So I'm going to give you some basics of a couple of types of mosaic crochet. I'm going to show you a couple of examples on how it's done using charts versus written directions. And then I'm going to share a couple of patterns with you guys so you can see what options and how to look for patterns based on the different types of mosaic crochet. All right, so let me go to sharing my screen. Turn on my light. Okay. There we go. Okay, so there's two common types of mosaic crochet. The first one is called either inset or interlocking crochet, which might look something like this. And the second one is called overlay crochet, which might look like this. So I'm going to show you examples of both. I'm going to start with the interlocking or inset. I've seen it listed both ways, and it might be an English versus US terminology that changes that. But inset or interlocking crochet, one of the things that sets it apart from others is you do 2 rows, a front side and a wrong side of each color. Anytime you're doing mosaic, I should take a step back. Anytime you're doing mosaic crochet, you're only using one color at a time. If you've ever done mosaic knitting, when you're working a round or a row, you're only working with one color at a time. Sometimes you knit a stitch and sometimes you slip a stitch, leaving it a different color by not working it. It's similar in mosaic crochet. You're working with one yarn at a time, and you're either crocheting or you are dropping down and crocheting into rows below to create the illusion of a different color on the row. So for example, on this inset crochet, I've got 2 colors going, my white and my green. And I started with just single crochet on the right side and a single crochet coming back. When you're doing overlay crochet, you only work from the right side. So that's one of the things that sets it apart. I actually made a mistake in my first one, and I'll show you, because I actually decided to leave it because it's a common mistake, and I wanted to be able to show you the difference. Typically, mosaic crochet is only done in single crochet, with single crochet stitches, with double crochet stitches, and chain stitches. Those are the only 3 that you need to know. You carry your yarn up the side, and typically, let me zoom out, a pattern will have both a chart and written directions for it. And I found in all of the pattern, and I looked at probably a dozen patterns, and I found most of them had both. But what you do need to know, and we've talked about this before in just pattern reading or chart reading, to read the pattern notes, because they give you all of the clues you need to then just to be able to work the chart or to use the written directions. So for example, that's what this little piece is. I'm doing it from this chart. So when I looked at the written directions, a couple of things that stood out. It tells you to use the color work chart from the bottom to the top and from the right to the left, which is how you would typically, from the right to the left going up, okay? Each row in the color work chart consists of 2 rows. So for example, my row 1 here is a right side row and the wrong side row coming back. So this is what I did in the white. The dark gray is, I'm sorry, the dark gray is the green and the white is the white. Is that right? Yes. So you start with whatever color it starts with, because it looks like it changes, is the color that that row is going to be. So this is 2 rows of green, 2 rows of white, 2 rows of green, 2 rows of, of white, and so forth. Now, just looking at this, I may not realize that this is 2 rows. That's why you have to read your pattern notes. Okay. Okay. The right side row is where you determine whether to work a single crochet, a double crochet 2 rows below, or a chain based on the chart, and I'll show you in a second. The wrong side row, you're really just mimicking whatever it is you just did on the right side row. You're repeating it going backwards. When you read the chart, the box is the same color as the starting color. Then you start with a single crochet. The other thing, oh, this is key, because not every pattern said this, but they all assumed that you would know this. Because chains take up less space than stitches, always work 1 more chain than the number of stitches being skipped. So, for example, if it's a chain 2 and then skip 1 single crochet, chain 3, well, I'm not going to show you that. I'm just going to show you. Anytime you're supposed to chain something, add an extra chain. And what that does, and I'm going to do it on a row here for you, is it keeps it, when I do a chain to leave a space to come down, it keeps it from pulling in too tight, because the chains are a little tighter than the single crochets. So you add an additional chain. Most patterns told you that in the pattern notes, but not all. So take the time to read the pattern notes ahead of time. Okay, so this one, I started with, let's see, I started with an extra, a row of the white just to get started. This would be like the border. So the first row that in my pattern is row 1 here, is the green. And it tells me single crochet, single crochet, single crochet, single crochet. So 7 single crochets.
Wait, it's the white, isn't it? Not the green?
I did a row, just a border row of white. So my very first row is actually my
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just to get started. Yeah. And I think in the written directions, which of course I didn't copy, give you that as a border, and this is your repeat here. So we're starting with my green row. We're going to forget I have a little white row there. Okay, so I've come to a white space, but I'm using green yarn. So what that tells me is that I need to do a chain. I'm not going to do a single crochet. I'm going to make a chain instead. So it's got 1 square. So I'm going to actually, instead of chaining 1, I'm going to chain 2. So I would do 7 single crochets, chain 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 single crochets. So I would work that across. I would turn it over. I would chain 1, and then I would do 7 single crochets, chain 2, 7 single crochets. And that's what I did here on this green row. And if I could move this out of the way, yeah, actually you could see it maybe on the back. There's my, and since I did this wrong, it's covering it up so you can't see it. Right there are my 2 chains. that skipped that space. Okay, so it's gonna be clear as I go along here. Row 2 is white all the way across. I'm sorry, well, actually it's row 3 because this was 2 rows of green and now I'm gonna do 2 rows of white, but I'm gonna do white all the way across. And when I get to that chain 2, instead of making a stitch right here, a single crochet right here, I'm gonna do a double crochet and drop it down to this row, which is what I did right here. So when I got to the chain, but I worked around the chains. I did the double crochet around the chains, which I shouldn't have done. I should have done it in front of the chains, which I'll show you. I'm going to come up here and move on to this row so you can see it. And it doesn't look right. It doesn't look like a double crochet. It looks like a spike stitch if you've done crochet before. It should look like a double crochet that comes down like this. So I'm going to move ahead to the row that I'm actually on, which is, let's see, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've done 7. I'm ready to do row 8, which tells me this is a single crochet in white. I did some chains here and I did some chains here. I'm going to do double crochet here into the row below, and you'll see that work in just a second. And then singles all the way across, and then double crochet here, 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 and a single. Okay, so the row below I had done in green, I had done a single crochet, and then I did a chain. There's 3 stitches, so I chained 4. Here's my chain 4. Then I did my singles across, my chain 4, my last single, I turned and I repeated that. A single, a chain 4, my singles across, chain 4, and my single. So now I'm ready to do the white. I'm going to kind of keep that there so you can see. I'm carrying my yarn up the side. That's one of the benefits of doing this type of crochet is you can carry your yarn up. So I want to start with the chain 1 anytime you're changing colors. I'm going to do the last yarn over in my new color. So I need to chain 1. So I'm going to do that in my new color to carry my color up. I'm going to do a single crochet into the first single crochet. And now, move this out of the way so you can see. Zoom in just a little. I'm going to do my double crochet into the 2 rows below. So start with the yarn over, and I'm going to go and want to go in front of the chains. I don't want to go over the chains because then you get a spike stitch like this. I want to go under both loops in front of the chain. Didn't start with a yarn over. And it's going to cover up the green. I've got 3 stitches there to do. And 1 more. So I've got my single, and then I did 3 doubles into that last row of white that's covered up my green. On the back were my chain stitches that I just went in front of. So on the back side of this work, I should have chain stitches that I'm passing over. Okay, so let me do that last double crochet again in front of the chains. And then I can go back and continue my chart, which then has me doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 single crochets right here in the middle. and then I'll go back and do 3 double crochets at the end. And I just want to line it up because I've gone over 4 chains, and I'm going to go into the next stitch available. So if you line it up right here for my single crochet. So by going down 2 rows, my double crochet bridges that gap and it keeps my row even. I'm gonna do my single crochets across. 2, 3, 4, go into both loops. 5, 6, 7, and then back to my chains. I'm going to do 3 double crochets in 2 rows below, staying in front of those chain stitches. 1, 2, 3, which leaves me with 1 single crochet left. And that's exactly what I had on my chart as well. So it gives the illusion that you're using 2 colors in each row by dipping down, but really the other color is just hiding behind, like that. All right, so my row back, I'm going to chain 1, turn it over, and I'm just going to do single crochets on the way back because I just want to just kind of set this row to get back. I'm not going to do double crochets because I've already set my doubles have already gone down, and I can just go into the tops of all of those and do a row of single crochet across.
So this isn't reversible.
This is not reversible. There are some mosaic stitches that are reversible. I would say the majority of them definitely have a different look on the back. And I did find some more complex patterns that I avoided that did make it reversible. And you can imagine, like when I got to here, I could go into the back. You know, when I did this, the double crochet on this side, I could have gone into the front loop only, so that when I got to this side, I could have also done a double crochet and gone into the front loop on this side. But it was pretty fiddly to do that. So that would make it reversible to do it that way. I opted not to on this video, but you could. And there definitely are patterns out there that have you doing that. Work across. And then I'm going to do a row of the green, because that's the row, those are always going to be the rows that I get my chains in. Turn it back over. I'm going to be switching to the green, so I'm going to go ahead and do my chain 1 in my green. And I'll go chain 1. All right, so now I'm ready for row 9, which has me doing 1 single crochet. It's going to have me chain 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 singles, chain 4, and a single. If I hadn't read the pattern notes, I would have only chained 3, but I know I have to add an extra chain. So let me do my single in the very first stitch. Then, if I had done just 3 chains, to get across, you would see how it pulls. So by adding that extra chain, it leaves enough room then to do the work in front of it. So I'm going to skip the 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and continue on with my single crochet. 7 of them. Pull out some yarn here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Chain 4, 2, 3, 4, and do my last single crochet. So by doing that chain 4, it bridges those 3 single crochets nicely without making it too tight or too gappy. All right, so now I'm going to go back and I'm going to do my chain 1 and turn and repeat. So to answer your question, Polly, I could knit into this chain. I could crochet into this chain, but I'm going to go ahead and make it, I think it's easier to work across the 2 chain gaps and it's easier to remember. I hate working into a chain stitch, so anytime I can avoid it. So I'm going to chain my 4. On the next row, I'll show you how you could make it reversible, Polly.
You don't have to. I was just
Yeah.
trying to fix it in my mind.
Yes, yes.
I don't need it to be more complicated.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think once you get the basics down, you understand where this is going. It's so I'm just mimicking what's already here. Chain 4 and a single crochet to end. Okay. So now I'm back, similar to what I had done before. Those 2 rows happen to be very similar. I've got my spaces where I know I'm going to be doing double crochets. So that was row 9. Now row 10, single crochet, single crochet. And since it's over here, this will be a double here, here, and here. Singles, double, 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 and a single. I'm going to switch to the other crochet style in just a minute here. Single.
Okay, where can you show when you get there, what are you supposed to do and what are you not supposed to do?
Okay, I'm going to do what you're not supposed to do first. You are not supposed to do, I want to go into 2 rows below. So here's the stitch I want to make my double crochet into. What I don't want to do is go all the way through to the other side and pull it up, because what you get there is what's called a spike stitch, which is a perfectly lovely, often used crochet stitch.
Right.
But what I want to do is go in and stay in front of those chains so that it looks like a double crochet and actually covers up. I'm just going to do one real quick. If you had wanted to make this reversible, I could go into just the front loop. And we'll see what that looks like when we come back. And then singles. Pull out some. I would advise doing, and I'm going to share some patterns with you too, to do a, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah, one more, 7. Doing something like in a washcloth first or a small square just to get the idea before you get locked into a, this one I'm going to do just in the front loop. And then a single in the last. Chain 1 and turn. Do a single. So this time I could do, instead of just working across these singles to make it reversible, I could lift up these chains and go into the back loop that I left open and do the double crochet there. And then go back to my singles. And what you get there is, so this is the back side. So instead, so here's what it looked like when we did it the other way, but you do make it reversible by going into the front loop on one side and the back loop on the other. So you could make it reversible. It's a little more tedious to do it that way. And I did find some patterns that absolutely had you doing that. I just opted not to do it today.
Sounds fine with me.
Yeah. If you're, for a lot of blanket patterns, it has you doing that. You know, if you want it to be a reversible blanket. A lot of cushions, there's a lot of pillow patterns. You know, those, the backside's going to be hidden. So you don't need to. And it goes a little faster that way. Okay, so that's an example of inset or interlocking crochet. And then you just continue on. So you're covering one row with another color by dipping down into the row below. That's the key for that one. The other kind, another common kind of mosaic crochet is called overlay crochet. And here's an example of overlay crochet. And this is the pattern I'm actually working on. This is a new one that's been on Ravelry. It's called Connected. There's a shawl version and then a cushion version. I opted to do the cushion version. So you're only working in overlay crochet, you're only working on the right side. Let me zoom out. You're only working on the right side. You are only working each row in one color. It doesn't, each row does not constitute two colors. It's just one row. And you're always working from right to left because you're never flipping it over to work the reverse side. Again, you're always using single crochets, double crochets, and chains. The difference is that you're using, since you're not working on a back side either, the single crochets are always done in the back loop. The double crochets are always done in the front loop, one row below. The downside is there's lots of ends, which you can do a variety of things with. This happens to be a cushion. So when it comes time to do the border, all of these ends, and this particular pattern has you doing a little chain one knot at the end, so it's not going to come undone, are going to get caught up. So I don't have to weave any of these in, which is good. So, but consider that when you're looking. You could also just plan for it to be fringe, or if you're doing something double-sided, you know, it has a different look on the back. It doesn't have a bad look on the back. It could be reversible, But when you add the border, you can catch all of these ends. You could trim them and then catch them all in a border. So it doesn't have to be having lots of ends. You do have to stop and cut every row. That's a downside, but you do get a kind of a different look. Most of the patterns that I came across also offered both chart and written instructions. The same is true for this particular cushion. This particular pattern, which is called Connected, offers video tutorials by a wonderful woman. Her name is Esther, and I'll put all of this on the link on the website. She runs a blog or a website called In a Nutshell, and I think she's Dutch, and she does the most beautiful, clear videos I have ever seen. She has UK versions, she has right-handed versions, she has left-handed versions of all the same pattern. She does it in the English version. She also does it in Dutch and German and other things. But you are not wondering where to put your crochet hook for her stitches. It's very clear. Okay, so I'm going to show you on this one. I printed out just the beginning to show you, to get an idea of pattern notes. So this one has row by row instructions, tells you which yarn to use and what to do each row. It also had charts if you would prefer to work from a chart, because one half this one happens to be worked at a diagonal. It's a corner to corner version. So here's the first half with the increases, and then you have the second half with the decreases. But in the pattern notes, it tells you read the whole pattern before you start. I highly recommend. The chain 1 or the chain 2 at the beginning of the row does not count as a stitch. You always need to know that whether it does or not in crochet. The first single crochet is always worked in the same stitch as the chain 1. The pattern is worked on the right side only, except for the first 7 and last 8 rows, where it's just building your foundation. So this triangle getting started, I flipped it over and worked back and forth, and then I stopped and I started with my working across. Let's see. Pattern is crocheted corner to corner. All single crochets are worked in back loop only, except the first 7 and last 8 where you're doing your corners. And in the first and the last stitch of every row, and I'll show you why. To do your increasing at each end, they have you going into the whole stitch instead of the front loop. All the double crochets are worked in the front loop only, in the second row beneath. When crocheting the pattern, the yarn is cut after every row. The pattern increases with 2 stitches from rows 1 to 69, and then decreases from 71 to 139. And then how you put it together, you've got different possibilities. So those are my pattern notes. And then I've got my row by row instructions. So I did the first 7 with some increasing. Row 8 had me starting with my green color. So the yellow is my color A, the green is my color B. I joined my new yarn, I chained 2, and I did 2 single crochets in the first stitch, and that's to do the increasing. And I did that into the whole stitch, not just the back loop. I did it into both loops of the stitch. I did 13 single crochets, and you can see them, they're under there. On the back side, you can see I did this single crochets all the way across. And then I did 2 single crochets in the very last stitch. I did my chain 1, I cut the yarn, and I pulled it. So I'm gonna start with the row that I'm on up here so you can see how it works. which happens to be row 13. I'm smart and work that out. All right, so zoom out just a little. Row 13, real quick, has me joining my new yarn. I'm going to chain 2. Every row starts the exact same way for the first half. Chain 2, 2 single crochets in the first stitch. I'm always going to end it with 2 single crochets in the last stitch and a chain 1. So everything else in between is what changes. I'm going to do 1 single, 5 doubles, 3 singles, 5 doubles, 3 singles, 5 doubles, 1 single, and then 2 singles in the last stitch. My pattern notes told me that my 1 single, all of my single crochets will be done into the back loop, and all of my double crochets will be done into the front loop 1 row below. All right, so knowing that, I'm going to keep that where I can see it. I'm going to go into, should have brought my glasses. I'm going to join my yarn with a slip stitch. Hold up. I'm going to chain 2. And I'm going to do 2 single crochets into the first stitch where my chain is, just like my pattern notes told me. So now I've done my increasing for this end. Okay, and I went under both loops to do that. Now I'm going to do 1 single crochet. So I'm going to go into the back loop to do a single crochet. And then I'm going to do 5 double crochets into the front loop 1 row below. So here are my front loops when I made them from the previous row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that I'm going to work into. So I'm going to go into the front loop, do my double crochet. So I'm covering up my row of some of my green stitches. 1. Again, staying on the front side of the work, not going all the way through to make a spike stitch. 3. 4. 5. Let's see, we're 13. 5 doubles. Now I'm going to do 3 singles. And I'm kind of lining it up to see where my next, I don't want to pull it over. Now I'm going to do 3 singles into the back loop only. Oops. So, 1, 2, 3, 5 doubles. And there are my front loops ready for me to go. So you know pretty quick if you've screwed something up, if there's not a front loop there available to you. I have to say, I did a couple of samples from some different patterns, and either following the chart or the written directions, it's really pretty easy as long as you've read the pattern notes and you know what you're supposed to be doing, going into the back loop, going into the front loop. And this pattern I really enjoy because it's very consistent. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Got 1 more. All right, so that was 5 doubles. Now I'm going to do 3 singles. Into the back loop for a single. 1, 2, 3. 5 doubles again. All right, so here I'm starting. I'm going to be skipping a couple here because I'm changing my mosaic pattern is changing a little. So I want to make sure I'm going into the correct. I did 3, 1, 2, 3. Now I need to do 5. So if I line it up, here is the very first front loop that I can make a double into. This one right here is directly below where I just made a single. So just take a moment just to make sure that you're going into the right space. Into 5. You want to make sure you're not, you know, for a pillow, gauge isn't exceptionally important, except that I don't want it to be too loose or too tight. Particularly, you don't want to have it tight because going into front loops and back loops can make a very dense fabric if it's too tight. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then I should have 1 single crochet left before I do my increase at the end. And I do right here. So 1 single into the back loop. And then 2 single crochets into the, knot over, into the last stitch. That one I did not fasten off. Let's try that again. And I want to go under both loops for my single, for my 2 singles at the end. Okay. Now it tells me to do a chain 1 and fasten off. Did I bring scissors? No. So I'm going to just pull it. And when I do a chain 1 and then pull it through, it does give you a nice little knot right there to keep your stitches lined up. And I obviously did not do it on this one because it's loose. So that's not going to come undone if I've done that little knot. And then I'm going to go back. My next row, I'm staying on the right side. My row 14, I'm switching colors every row. And then I'll work across that way. Row 14, I'm going to show you from the chart this time. They've made the chart any smaller for old people's eyes. Oh, my Lord. Okay, so let's do a little guess here. This is 8, 9, 10, so clearly I'm going to have to blow that up. I seriously can't read that. I'm going to have to blow it up. We're going to go back to our words. Row 14, join the yarn, chain 2, 2 singles in the first stitch, and then 7 singles, 1 double, 9 singles, 1 double. Very symmetrical, this pattern. 7 singles, 2 single crochets in the last stitch, fasten off. And it always gives you a nice stitch count at the end. So I should have 27 single crochets and 2 double crochets at the end of this row. So it's nice to keep you in line. I have to say, of both crochet patterns, I actually prefer this one, even though it's got ends. Knowing I don't have to weave them in, it's quite nice. Right, I'm going to do 1 more row in this, and then if you've got questions, don't hesitate. And then I'm going to show you a couple of patterns.
What yarn is that?
I'm using the one that was recommended for this one is the Stone Washed River Washed, which I really like. It's got great colors. There's a lot of people making this pattern right now. The color combinations are beautiful. He gave a shawl version, a big triangular shawl version, as well as this cushion version of the pattern. All right, so I start with 2 singles in the first. Get my increasing. Oh, I did my chain 2. Okay. All right, now I'm going to do 7 singles. So now I'm going to do back loop only. which by doing it in back loop only leaves the front loops available to come do the double crochets into if needed, if they need it for the pattern or not. And that way you stay on the front only and you don't have to. 7. 6, 7. Okay. And when you're going down to do a double crochet, you're always going to be going into the same color that you're currently working with. So I know my doubles are going to go down into a green. So if I've gotten like, oh, I don't have a green to go down into, I probably have not done the right number of stitches. But I'm right here ready. The next stitch available, there is a front loop. This one I'm only going to do 1 double in that row below. And then nine singles. I'll go back to the back loop because I might need the front loop later. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, double, 7 singles, singles right there, and then it should leave me with 1 stitch left to do my 2 singles into for my increase. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I have 1 single left. I'm going to go into both loops for my increase stitches, as my pattern notes told me. 1, 2, chain 1, and fasten off. Go into my center knot. And there you go. So we're getting the nice, knowing that I'm going to be covering some of these green ones up. And I don't think it looks bad on the back. I mean, I think you could make it, I mean, it's just striped on the back, but it does look nice. So that's the overlay crochet. And I'll put the titles of these patterns in the notes. This was a free pattern that I found. Let me zoom out. For a whole Afghan, which, you know, you don't have to do a whole Afghan. But I wanted to give you an example of if you just found a pattern and you weren't sure what kind of crochet, how to check. All right, so it's got all my yarn, my gauge, all of that on the first page. Second page, I've got notes. All right, so we've got, it's a diamond design. Rectangular blanket is worked flat from the foundation chain to the mosaic pattern, repeats every 17 rows throughout the body with optional tassels comprising the border on either end. Starting with row 4, all odd numbered rows are worked in both the single crochet and mosaic double crochet stitches. Chain spaces will be worked in adherence to those of the previous odd numbered rows. So I'm going to have chain stitches, which tells me it's the inset or this style of mosaic crochet. So you will be working both sides. The first and the last single crochet stitch of each row are worked separately from the mosaic crochet chart. So I know they're not in my chart. Charts are read from right to left. representing 2 rows worked in the same color. So those are some of my clues to tell me what kind of, I'm going to the chart. So each of these rows constitutes a right side row and a wrong side row. So row 1 is really, it's a row, right side row in white, the wrong side row in white. Row 2 is also in, and this is a good question. How do I know which color to start with? I wonder if they're going to tell me here. Let's see. Charts are red. Second row of each color is worked in a series of single crochet and chain spaces, identical to stitches worked in the preceding row. Chain spaces count as a stitch throughout the work. The beginning chain 1 does not count as a stitch.
It says that you start with the main color.
Correct. Yes. Correct. Use stitch markers to help your pattern repetition because you're doing so many across. All right, changing colors. All right, so here's the special stitches, the mosaic double crochet. Working in front of the stitches, work a double crochet in the skipped single crochet 3 rows below. So they want you to work in front of those chain stitches. So this is not a reversible pattern. That's the clue, but that's what it's telling me. So main color for row 1, row 2, row 3. So row 4 is where your contrast color starts.
What does that C1 to 16 mean?
That's a good question. Let's see. Main color. Oh, because this particular pattern has you changing your color yarn to get this gradient. So you do 16 rows in one of the browns, and then you switch your contrast color. So every 16 rows, you don't use the same contrast color, you switch it. If you want this kind of look, you could just pick 2 colors. But if you want to follow this kind of idea, that's what they have you doing. So they have, I think they had 6 different contrast colors, and then they faded through them. And in here, yeah, so they're just telling you, you do 16 rows in the first one, and that's where the pattern repeats. Here, and then here, and then here. So you know when to change. So that's how you can look at a pattern and decide, and this happened to be a free one, so I could get all the information and have to buy anything and get an idea of what kind of mosaic crochet it was. It also had very good reviews, so here's an up close. And I probably could tell, I mean, if I really zoomed in here, it does look like it is covering, that you've got chain stitches behind here that you're dropping behind. Does anybody have questions?
So it must use a lot more yarn, right?
Yeah, you do, because you're exactly. You do have to use more yarn because you're covering up, you're doing whole rows and covering up stitches. That's an interest. I wonder how much extra I mean, crochet already uses more yarn than knitting. It really is gonna, and with this, you know, with cutting every end, I mean, you could be minimal on your cutting because you really, you know, by tying it off, I don't need to leave a lot, just enough to get caught up in the border. But I found it kind of fun. It was kind of, I mean, once I figured out the chart and what I was doing and where I was going, and her videos really, really, really are really wonderful. And she has a lot of them. And she does it row by row. You know exactly where you are. You could actually follow her videos and never look at the pattern. She's really quite good. But it does use a lot of yarn. Let me pull up my Ravelry favorite. quilts. I also found this up. Share my screen. Okay, so I found you can do this on anything. This was adorable. There are lots and lots of blanket patterns, but you can do the mosaic design like this in a hat. It doesn't have to be a huge project. Make that bigger. I thought that was kind of cute. I liked these little gloves too. Something other than those I thought were very cute and a great way to use up some scraps of things too. And to try something new without it being, like I said, an entire blanket or something like that, to get the idea. And I'm going to put the names of these patterns on the website for you too, so you can go back and link to them. This one was, I like Marley Bird. I can't imagine there's anybody who hasn't used a Marley Bird pattern. She does every year a tournament of stitches in a knit version and a crochet version. And the crochet version of last year was a variety of different mosaic patterns. It's free on her website, or it's $10 to buy it here. You can follow it on her website very, very nicely without having to buy it. And it gives you a nice, if you want to try a stitch, you can just pick that section and you could just do a washcloth in that section. You wouldn't have to do the entire scarf, but you can see different mosaic patterns to try them out or to practice with it in a small form. She's also got excellent directions. This one is, I believe this is done. Let's see, I did look. Let's go back. This one has spaces, so here's how you can tell without actually having to buy a pattern. If it's got a listing of any of its abbreviations or any of its tags, if they've got chain spaces, then you know it's going to be that inset, that first one that I showed you. You're going to be working both sides of the pattern. And then it just becomes a matter of preference at that point. This one does look like, I can't tell if she's folding it, what it looks like on the back side, if she's showing both sides or she's only showing her right side. I would be interested in that. But I really enjoy Marley Bird patterns. She's very good at what she does. This one I thought was great, using 2 colors. A very cool effect. Again, that's the inset where you do the spaces. Always check to see if it's got UK terms, if it's US or UK terms, because when they say double crochet, they mean single. This is also quite cute. This is done in Katona yarn. I could not pronounce anything but her first name is Tina. I can't pronounce anything else about her name, but she has lots and lots and lots of really great mosaic patterns. Many of them done in sheep just yarns. This one is on my list to do next. She actually you start the crochet with the zipper. You do like an embroidery into the zipper so that, and then you build it off of the zipper and you come back at the other side. And so when you're done, the zipper's in. You don't have to add the zipper later. I thought that was so cute. That might be on my holiday list of things to make. I thought that was so cute.
It is cute.
Yeah, and that's one with chain spaces. And small, not a huge project. It doesn't have to be a huge project. Excuse me. She also has great videos. This one. You can do it in a granny style. You can do it in this happens to be a hexagon.
Well,
And we have this book here, but it's a mosaic style, excuse me, in a hexagon. This is also the river washed and stone washed.
so if you wanted to make a pillow, you could really take any one of those patterns
You really could.
and just make it square instead of the corner to corner.
Exactly. That's exactly what you could do. And I think that's a nice way to, add an accent. This one, the Very Rainbow Blanket by Tatiana. I also cannot, she goes by Lila Bourne. Very, very, very good crochet. Excellent blog, excellent directions. This is a variety of crochet stitches. She does really beautiful work as well. So I picked what I knew were good designers with clear instructions, and I'm going to put a link to all of these patterns. Many of them, this happens to be done in Metropolis, which is a fingering weight, but you could do that in any weight. You could do that in something a little heavier and make it, don't do all of the repeats, and do it as a pillow if you don't want to do a blanket. Again, the pattern is free on her blog if you don't want to buy the pattern. She's got photo tutorial. She does a really great job. And we'll guide you through. Let me just get down and show you. She gives really clear photo tutorial. So again, you can see the chain spaces. She's got you dipping down over the chain spaces. So, and then did I have another one? I think those were my favorites. This one's very similar. This one's done again in the stone washed, river washed. Just has a nice, the colors look so nice together, and there's such a nice range of colors. And I believe we have that. This is from the same one, Martin Up North, another great designer. He's the one doing that connected pillow. We have this book with the pattern in it as well, if you want to look at it up close. So that's what I have on Mosaic Crochet. I found it quite fun, and now I have a whole nother project I have to make. So that makes, I haven't taken any of them off. So that's 85. Because I started that pillow for the corner to corner last time, and I'm still working on that. But
Did you give us the pattern for that one?
for which one?
The first one you were working on, the corner to corner one.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
That's connected. I think, is that the one you and I were talking about, Polly? When you
right, because I had seen it, but I don't remember where I saw it.
You saw it on Ravelry, and I'll put the link to it on the website. This is the one that, let me go back to sharing my screen real quick. Let me search. Oh, no, it's going to be one of the, because I did it in caps. Ravelry is so particular. All right, so here's the pillow.
What's that one?
Yeah, this is it. Here's the cushion size square. And then, let's see. And he's got great pictures. A lot of people are making this. 70 people are working on it in all different colorways. But let me, here's the wrap. It's also the same pattern. Yeah, it's something, but it's really beautiful. And again, he left the ends as fringe. Did a border on some of it, but left ends as fringe. Again, it's got the tutorials with it. I mean, that is a big wrap.
Yeah. That's a blanket.
That's, yes, but really gorgeous. And so I was really, really quite, because it's beautiful. I was quite grateful he did a cushion version because I can't do another wrap.
I don't want to talk about it.
I know. Look at it, size available, huge.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. How much, I'm just curious here, how much yarn do you need? You need 18 balls of one color and 15 balls of another.
Jeez.
That's a lot of yarn.
Yeah.
Good for
That-
business.
Yeah, but it's really quite pretty. And you can see the back side of it in there. So it's not reversible, but I don't mind the way it looks on the back. It just looks like stripes to me.
Yeah.
It's tidy
Yeah.
on the back, I think is the best way to say it. It doesn't look like the hot mess of some of my knitting on the back. I mean, it just looks like stripes.
Right.
So I wouldn't mind this being a blanket. And again, you can do the ends into the border. I would just trim them because you have that nice little knot. So I'm looking forward to this getting bigger quicker.
I like that pattern better than the first one.
You what?
I like that pattern better than the first one.
I
the way
do
you did
too.
it.
I do too. But knowing that both are out there and that there are different, I mean, and there are some different styles. They both have their pluses and minuses, but I thought this was lovely.
That's nice.
Really nice to work with. So
Okay, thank you.
you're
Very good.
welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.